This week, we are reviewing one of the easiest white wines to identify in a blind tasting. And in the tip of the week, we're going to talk about all the basics of proper home storage of wine. All of that coming up next. Hello and welcome to Wine This Week with Scott Leek. This week, we are talking about an exciting white wine varietal called Gewurztraminer. It looks like a mouthful, but it's actually not that hard to say. So just remember that W sounds like a V in German, and that last syllable sounds like meaner, as in Regina is a lot meaner than Gretchen. So hopefully that'll make it easy for you to remember from here on out. But the word Gewürz in German means spicy. And while there are a lot of notes of spice in the aroma and even in the palate of this wine, you're going to get things like cinnamon or allspice and ginger. What I would recommend trying to remember and kind of pair this with is that this goes great with spicy food. So Southeastern dishes, Middle Eastern dishes that have some spice and heat to them, I think this is one of the best pairings for those types of cuisine. So remember, Gewürz, spicy. Pair this with spicy food. We'll talk about this a little bit more later. But this particular bottle today is from the region of Alsace in France, and it's right along the Rhine River where France borders on Germany. And I thought, well, let's do some research on this. I wonder if Alsace was ever actually part of Germany, and I couldn't find any evidence whatsoever of Germany ever trying to occupy any part of France or take anyone's land that wasn't theirs or fight any wars over any land. They just seem like a really peaceful, fun-loving country. So I can't make any sense of it. In addition to Alsace, there's a sarcastic history lesson aside. In addition to Alsace, you will find Gewurztraminer in the northern region of Italy, where there is a city called Tramin, which is believed to be part of where this wine got its name. So you'll find it there, a little bit in cooler climates in California and Washington as well. But outside of those spots in the US, it's going to be found somewhere in the outskirts of the Alps, and that's about it. Only about 20,000 acres that is planted worldwide, which is maybe about 5% of how much Chardonnay is planted worldwide, to put that in a little perspective. A couple other interesting things about this grape is that although it is a white wine, the grape skins on this are actually kind of pink or even light red in color. They almost look like the table grapes you might buy at the grocery store. The grapes themselves tend to do really well in cool and moderate climates, and they don't have a whole lot of acidity to them. So in a really hot vintage, they can make kind of poorer quality wines. They might be a little flabby, not having that acid to balance out the rest of the wine. So if you don't like high acid white wines, this might be a good one to try as well, because it tends to be a low acid wine. But because those sugars tend to ripen, or the grapes tend to ripen, they produce a lot of sugar. These tend to be fairly high in alcohol as well. This is a 14% wine, which is about as high as you're going to see a white wine that isn't actually a dessert wine as well. So let's get started tasting some Gewurztraminer. Today's wine is a 2018 Gewurztraminer from Alsace by Emil Bayer. This is a winery chateau that has been around since 1580. So I think they know what they're doing when it comes to making Gewurztraminer. They also make Riesling as well. Those are the top two grapes you'll find in the region of Alsace in France. And probably some of the best quality Gewurztraminer you're going to find. Already, like, I started swirling this before I even got it near my face, and I can smell this wine. And this is something that Gewurztraminer really stands out about Gewurztraminer, is how intense the aromas are. On the color, this is a fairly deep gold color. I mean, this just, you guys can take a good look at that. Gorgeous golden color here. Love it. Oh my goodness. This is so intense. Wow. It's almost hard to start to describe everything that's here, because there is so much in the nose on this wine. Wow. Okay, let me give this a shot. Lot of tropical fruits and some citrus, but not like lemon or lime that you get in some lighter whites. I'm getting more like tangerine, pineapple. And one of the things that this is most well known for is smelling and tasting like a fruit called lychee. I've never had one. I've never even seen one in person. I'll throw a picture up of it here, but it's like a small red husked fruit that when you peel the husk off, it reveals this white inside that, and then there's a seed inside that. But apparently it's a southeastern fruit, kind of tropical, and I don't know how to describe the flavors other than it's supposed to taste kind of like sweet roses. So if you're ever going to eat a rose and have it be a little sweet, I guess that's what a lychee tastes like. So there's definitely some floral aromas here, and yeah, there's that spice. You get some ginger, and I don't know, I'm not gonna say cinnamon, but there's something kind of in that cinnamon or allspice category. I just can't quite pinpoint it. All right, enough with that. Let's taste it. Oh my gosh. So again, this is one of the easiest wines to identify in a blind tasting. Holy cow. This doesn't taste like any other white wine you've ever had before, I'm guessing. It reminds me a little bit of Sauterne, which is a dessert wine. But the thing is, it's not sweet. You can get a sweet Gewurztraminer. This one is not. This is, I'll call this off dry. I gotta get back to the basics here. My goodness, that is an intense wine. Holy cow. Okay. Yeah, so this is not a very acidic wine. I'm gonna call this even less than medium on the acidity, medium low acidity on this. The alcohol is there. I'm just gonna call it medium though, even though it says it's 14%, it's nicely balanced with the other things that are going on here. So not a ton of heat on it, but yeah, noticeable. So I'm gonna call it medium on the alcohol. And this is full bodied. I mean, this thing coats your mouth. It's almost like olive oil in that sensation in your mouth. If you ever just like actually sipped olive oil, like good quality olive oil, that's almost what this is like. Obviously the flavor is different, but in terms of the viscosity and the way it feels in your mouth, that just kind of slick oiliness, which might sound gross, but it's really good. This is a fun wine. This is a tough one to just kind of sit and sip by itself though. This thing is screaming for food to go with it. And I might seem a little exuberant. I swear, you can see I'm not drunk yet. This is just so fun. Oh my gosh, I am digging this wine. I've had Gewurztraminer before, but it's honestly been a while. It's just, like I said in the beginning, it's not a very common grape. Wow. So now some of the spices are coming through. And again, don't think of spicy, but spices. So there's ginger definitely on the palate now. And there's some kind of like apple pie baking spices, but I don't really get apple flavors itself. I'm just thinking more of, you know, what would be some of the flavors you would have in an apple pie. A little bit of vanilla, and it's possible to have a Gewurztraminer with a little bit of oak in the aging. So a little vanilla here, but it was in like the first thing I noticed flavor-wise was this honeyed taste. So it's not sweet. Again, this is off dry, but because of the intensity of the fruit, there's this perceived sweetness that is higher than it actually is, which is why this is going to go so great with spicy food. Because if you think of sweet and spicy going together, just balancing each other out and like refreshing your palate, like taking some of that heat off, providing that contrast. Man, this is such a fun wine. Those fruit characteristics that I mentioned before, pineapple. I really wish I knew what lychee tasted like, because there's something I can't put my finger on, I can't quite name, and I'm guessing that's it. But that kind of sweet rose flavor I talked about is there, and pineapple. This is a cool wine. Can't wait to have this with food later. I am actually gonna make some like spicy salmon stir fry tonight to have with this. Great. Okay, so from a balance perspective, it's almost a little overpowering on some of the floral and honey flavors. I do think food's gonna help balance it out, but on its own, and I'm drinking this at cellar temperature. I should have this a little bit cooler, but I did just drink it here at cellar temperature. So a little cooler, it might feel a little bit more balanced than it is, but not bad. Overall, like I said, the balance of the alcohol is pretty good, and I'd like a little more acidity on this, but overall pretty good. The intensity is off the chart, so I'm going to give it a ton of points for intensity, and complexity is pretty good too. It's got some nice complexity to it, and it's got a pretty good finish. So I'm going to score this a little higher than some other white wines I've had before because of these very objective criteria, but it doesn't necessarily mean I like it better than some of the wines I've scored less than this. I'm going to give this 7.5 points for all of these different aspects that it's got going on. Again, this is a very quality maker of Gewurztraminer, so no doubt that as far as Gewurztraminers go, this is a good one. And as a whole, everything about the grape, this is pretty fun. This is exciting, and I can't say it enough. I cannot wait to have this with some spicy food. If you're watching this channel, there's a good chance you've got a couple of bottles of wine laying around at home. And whether that's the case or you're actually starting to build up a little bit of a collection, if you're going to hold your wines for anything more than a week, you want to make sure that they're stored properly. So I want to cover just 3 basics you need to make sure you're getting right when it comes to your wine storage. Now, there's a reason why for hundreds and hundreds of years, winemakers, going back to ancient winemakers, stored their wines either in caves or actually buried them under the ground, because they provided the 3 key elements that you need to do as well at home. Number 1, make sure that your wines are stored at a proper temperature. So unfortunately, that means if you don't have a wine refrigerator, you should not keep your wines in your kitchen. The temperature, the light, all the aspects of being in your kitchen is just too much for the wine. They need to be stored at a constant temperature. Cellar temperature is usually between 50 and 55 degrees. You can get all the way up to 70 without it being too much of an issue, but you also want to make sure it's not fluctuating too much. So from summer to winter, can it go from 55 to 70? Yeah, that's okay. But over the course of a couple days or a single day to fluctuate up and down considerably, not really good for the wine. So constant temperature and below 70 degrees are the key points there. Secondly, you want to make sure that you do not store your wines upright. If you can see behind me here, these are stored on racks, they're stored on their side. And the main reason for that is because when it's on its side like this, the wine is now in contact with the cork. And the reason that's really important is because cork is a little bit porous. So here are 2 sponges from the same brand. This is a brand new one that's a little moist. This one has dried out. There's a pretty considerable difference. This will happen to your cork if it isn't in contact with the moisture of the wine. It will dry out, it will shrink. So make sure that that wine is going to be on its side as much as you can, and let that wine stay in contact with the cork. Keep that cork moist. It will prevent oxidation of the wines. The third thing is you want to make sure that the wine avoids light as much as possible. There's a reason why very few bottles are actually clear, and if it's clear, it's almost always going to be a white wine. Wines come in dark glass, and that is also to help protect the wines from light. So store it in a closet, store it under the stairs, anywhere where it's going to stay mostly dark. You don't want a spot that is going to get any natural sunlight, the least amount of natural sunlight possible, but even artificial light, you want very little amount. Here, having some light on 30 minutes a week, not really doing a whole lot of damage, but that's about as much as you want to do. And a little bonus tip I'll give you here too, when it comes to the light on the wines, look at when you're shopping at a store. Hopefully your wine store is doing a good job of storing their wines, but they also know that they might be flipping over the inventory pretty quickly. I'm looking at where is natural light coming into the wine store. If you think based on where the windows are and the time of day, if that bottle on a shelf somewhere is getting hit with natural light, I'm grabbing the one behind it. So think about that as well when you're buying your wine, to make sure that you're not getting one that already was damaged before you even took possession of it. So those are the 3 things. Avoid fluctuating temperatures and keep it below 70. Keep the wine on its side to keep that cork moist, and avoid natural light. You do those 3 things. You should also avoid vibration, so don't put it by like the washer or dryer. But those are the 3 things you really need to know for proper wine storage and to enjoy the most out of your wines that you're going to age for a little while. Thank you for watching another episode of Wine This Week. I hope you enjoyed it, and if so, please like and subscribe. Join me next week as we move on to southern France and a little bit of Spain for an awesome varietal that I have just been on a kick for many years now, Grenache. Until then, keep trying new wines, and as always, cheers.